Welcome to Books on the New Rich. I'm your host, April Sharice. This is the start of our season 4, so yay for that. We had took a little hiatus between season 3 and season 4, but it was all for good merit. We have today joining us Miss Leslie Ricks. She is an author. She is a force of nature, just on her own rights. And so today she has a beautiful story that she's going to be sharing that encompasses her book. And she has a wealth of knowledge on how to best market that book, especially being a newcomer to the publishing world, and how you can use efficiency to really get your book out there if your resources are limited. So I'm really excited about the show today and everything that Leslie's going to share. So without further ado, Leslie, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself before you became an author?
Yes. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of the show. As she said, I am Leslie D. Ricks. I am an author. I am a veteran. I am a mother. Before being an author, I was the eldest daughter of Joyce Marie Oden, who passed in 2020. My mother passed a terminal illness called sickle cell that primarily affects African Americans. Growing up the eldest, not only did she have sickle cell, but my mother was a preacher. She was a single parent.
Yeah.
She raised 3 girls. She was a fighter. She was a warrior, and she instilled in me faith. I truly believe my passion for writing came from her. She always
Mhm.
wrote poems, and I started writing by journaling. It
Oh,
was
okay.
never my intent to be an author. I just love to journal. I would journal everything.
Yeah.
And so, as you see when you read my book, it is actually all of my journal entries compiled and then expanded on.
Wow.
And is how I became an author because of journaling.
And I want to stop right here just for a moment because I know journaling is used for me as an adult just to get through healing. Can you just talk about, as a teenager, how journaling affected you? Not thinking towards the future, but just in the moment of getting through high school moments or early 20s or whatever it might be.
Journaling for me, even at a young age, I don't know if you remember the toy called My Dear Diary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a My Dear Diary, and that is how I started journaling.
Okay.
And I would journal my emotions. Growing up, I dealt a lot with anger. I had a lot of anger and struggle to manage temperament. And
Hmm.
one of the ways I was able to do that was through journaling. And I find that as you release the emotions and you put words to it and you're able to describe it and you're able to see it, you're able to release it from your body because that energy has to go somewhere. So for someone like me who has struggled with anger or temperament, if I could put words to how I'm feeling, to how people were treating me, feeling bullied, having teachers tell me I wasn't smart, I
Yeah.
struggled to read in school, I struggled with reading comprehension. So much of our family's time was devoted to my mom's illness that often our academics took a back seat because we
Yeah.
spent days and months in the hospital.
Yeah.
It wasn't due to intentional neglect. It was just being raised by a terminally ill mother.
Mhm.
And so I remember writing and or typing in my dear diary my feelings, even about her sickle cell, my anger, my disappointment, my discouragement. I remember writing prayers to God, asking God to heal my mom. And
Yeah.
so it's really how it started in adolescence and getting those feelings out of my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as if I hold on to the feelings and to the anger and to the disappointment, more than likely I was going to seek other ways as a child to get it out.
Yeah.
Tantrum,
That is
out
true.
outburst and things like that. So writing is truly an outlet that allows you to express and release negative emotions.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of research done on the healing power of journaling. I just so happened to stumble across journaling in my youth by accident.
Was it a friend that mentioned it or you just a commercial?
It was just in me to
Yeah.
write, get it out.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know there was power in it. I didn't know it could facilitate healing. I didn't know it would lead to me being an author because, again, I struggled to read. I struggled with reading comprehension
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
all through high school.
Wow, that's so it's really, really organic and it could almost be spiritually guided. Spiritually could have led you there. So that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And first, before I say this, tell everyone the name of the book.
The name of the book, and I have it here, is to show you what it looks like. The Trap, Volume 1, Overcoming in Grace. It is one of three books. Second book will be Walking in Grace, and the third book is Extending Grace.
Wow.
And they all build on each other.
Yeah.
And it is truly about how we as women and men, how we overcome. And the key to overcoming is showing up.
Yeah.
And if I don't say anything else, I want to say this. If God graces you to wake up, then you have a responsibility to show up. And when you show up, just put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
God will do the rest.
That is such a powerful statement. I want to stop right here and just let it marinate in our minds. Um, because sometimes we believe that in order to show up, it has to be this masquerade or this large effort on our part. But like you said, one foot in front of the other and just relying on your faith, relying on God to carry you through that day or that meeting or that moment. So I really love that a lot. And so, since you speak about overcoming in this book, is it stemming from or originating all the things that you've overcome in childhood up to now? Or is it just realization in your adulthood that you wanted to share tips on overcoming?
So, volume one addresses the traps. And so,
Okay.
the title of the book, The Trap. And what are the traps? What are traps? When you think of a trap, what comes to mind is a bear trap. And it's designed for when the bear walks through it, that the trap will collapse down. And as it
Mm,
collapses down, the bear's foot typically is now stuck. It's painful.
mm,
And it's designed to break the bear down, trap them, keep them stuck where they're at. And
yeah,
so in volume one, I'm talking about the trap of fear, the trap of self betrayal, the trap of shame, and the trap of rejection. All those traps that I have endured through my life. It starts with the first trap of rejection and how I felt rejection at an early age from my father being absent, and
yes,
how it plagued me in adulthood fighting for job opportunities as a federal employee, fighting my way through the glass ceilings as a Black woman, fighting my way for opportunities as a woman. And
yeah,
so the traps come, but when you're overcoming in grace, you know that you're not alone.
yeah,
You
that's
know that the trap is not designed to kill you. But if anything, from reading the book, you'll learn that the trap is designed to build you, to strengthen your
true.
character,
Wonderful.
to enhance your ability to rely on God's grace to get you through.
Yeah,
And that is what overcoming in grace is about. It's an introduction to grace, it's the
mm,
introduction to God's presence um, with you as you go through the traps. And then it challenges the readers to identify the traps in their life.
yeah, yeah,
And as you identify the traps in your life, I encourage the readers to define their trap
yeah,
and then strategize ways to overcome that trap and acknowledge where God has carried them through the trap, because we will not stay stuck. The
exactly.
Bible teaches us that, even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil because he is with us. And that is walking in grace.
Yeah, yeah,
Walking in grace is being aware in the middle of our fear, in the middle of our rejection, in the middle of our abandonment, in the middle of loneliness, after divorce, after death,
yeah,
after defeat, after having a lack of faith, after experiencing failure. that we're walking in grace and we're walking towards God, towards his light.
Yeah.
And that if we keep walking and we keep showing up, God is waiting for us. That is the prize
Yeah.
that we endured, that we overcame, that we were strengthened. And as we overcome, we have a responsibility. And this will take us into volume 3,
Mm.
extending grace. So you can't just overcome for you. You can't just heal for you. If God has called you to overcome, and I believe we're all called to overcome and to heal, we have a responsibility to look back and
Mm.
extend that same grace that got us through.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to change the trajectory of our children and our grandchildren and impact the lives of those around us
Yeah.
and reach and pull them out of the depths and let them know, no, we're going to overcome this and we're going to overcome this together and we're going to overcome this in God because his grace is what's keeping us.
Yeah. And this is something that I know we use grace a lot, right? Everybody understands what grace is. Everybody doesn't understand how you get to the point of grace. Can you just share with us a little bit as to, was this instilled in you to have a close relationship with God and a close walk with God? Did people explain to you this was grace, this was God's grace in your life, and you began to understand it that way? But how did you come to understand what grace looked like?
Grace is something that you can't come into. It just exists.
Mhm.
God's nature is gracious and it's giving us what we don't deserve. When you think of being a mother, I'm a mother of 2 boys, and I give them grace when they maybe don't do good in school, or I give them grace when they've been disrespectful and I redirect them. That's
Yeah.
me. You don't deserve that, but you're getting it
Yeah.
because of my love for you. And so, how I came into the knowledge of grace, I stumbled across the scripture that said, my grace is sufficient for you. And
Mm.
that is the scriptural foundation for overcoming in grace, which is my brand.
Yeah.
Um, and when I look at that and I begin to research, my grace is sufficient to you. God is saying, my grace is sufficient. And when I am weak, then it's an opportunity to be strong. It lets me know, what is this grace that is sufficient for my weaknesses, that is sufficient for my failures, that is sufficient for my imperfections.
Yeah.
What is this grace? It's this thing that God gives us that draws us near him.
Yeah.
It's this energy, it life force, it sustains us, it keeps us.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't have to be aware of it. I don't walk into grace. Grace is given to me. It's this gift. And when I look at the traps and I look at the fear and I look at the rejection, God is telling me my grace is sufficient for you.
Yeah.
Okay, God, so if your grace is sufficient, I don't have to wear the shame.
Yeah.
I don't have to carry this burden. I'm no longer rejected because you know what? Your grace is giving me the peace that I need.
Yeah.
When I felt abandoned, when my husband left me, God's grace is sufficient for all of those emotions and traumas and triggers. And I can rely on his grace in my weakness. And as I
Mhm.
rely on his grace, then I am made stronger in him
Yeah.
and for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. Totally agree. 100%. And I'm glad you broke it down beforehand to explain what grace is, just for those who didn't fully understand what it meant or how it is applied in life, so to speak. So,
And we should seek to be gracious to others.
yeah.
You know, some people don't deserve our grace, but we should extend it. Why? Because God is so gracious and gives it to us.
Yeah. Exactly.
When we are undeserving, when we choose to be unforgiving, when we choose to be petty, when we choose to be messy, when we
Yeah.
choose to be manipulative, when we choose to gossip, when we choose to hurt people, God is still giving us grace that we did not deserve. And
Right.
so we have a responsibility to give that same grace to our children, to our husbands, to our family members, to our coworkers,
Yeah.
so that we may walk in grace. because walking in grace is about giving grace. It's about receiving, but it's also about extending it once you're aware of the grace of God.
So it sounds like there is going to be a lot to learn in the next two books. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to when they come out. I know listeners today are probably going to share the same sentiments that I have that, wow, I need to get book one because it seems like it's so impactful and full of little nuggets that I can apply to life. But boy, two and three will help me complete my walk. So I'm looking forward to that. I won't have you disclose when it's coming yet. I'll save that to the end of the show, so you guys will know. One question before we get to marketing, sorry, is have you faced any criticism?
I have. I've faced criticism. So when you decide to be an author
Mhm.
and you decide to write on your real life
Yeah.
experiences, that impacts the way people perceive you, that impacts the way your family will see you. I've disclosed information in the book that my closest relatives didn't know.
Mhm.
So as you decide to be transparent and you decide to heal,
Yeah.
you're going to face criticism for how you heal. But again, a big part of me deciding to share my story is about extending grace and allowing people to know as they walk through the traps, they're not alone.
Oh, yeah.
So that means I had to sacrifice myself in a way to be open to facilitate the healing of others
Yeah.
and to introduce people to grace. So, for example, my grandmother, she was like, I would have never said that. I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
that's, you know what, that's fine because I am called to overcome, to be an example of how God's grace will work. I am
Yeah.
called. That is my divine mission. That is my destiny. That is my mandate to share. And you have to have the confidence in who you are and who God has called you to be to
Yeah.
execute the assignment in spite of criticism.
Yeah.
And Jesus executed his assignment even at home when he went back to the town and they didn't acknowledge him.
Yeah.
They didn't acknowledge him as the Messiah. He accepted criticism. And so sometimes criticism is going to come with your life's purpose,
Yeah.
but you have to continue to press and push. You have to commit to your destiny because you don't want to live a life with unfulfilled purpose.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
called more than just potential.
Yeah.
So as you walk in your purpose, you're going to endure maybe some periods of isolation. You're going to endure criticism. You're going to receive negative feedback.
Yeah.
But when you know it is your life's mission, it is your purpose, you
Yeah.
can rest assured that you'll overcome and conquer even the naysayers.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful stuff. So I know everybody is feeling emotional right now. They probably have a lot of questions in their head. So we'll ease off of them just a little bit. For the authors out there who may be contemplating writing, marketing the book, what did that look like for you when your book came out?
Marketing is truly hard. There's no
Yeah,
other way to say it.
that is true.
Marketing is hard. It is time consuming. You have to be strategic. You have to have a plan. When I launched my book originally, I launched it in 2020 during COVID.
Mhm.
And so marketing looked really different. Marketing can be a full time job. You
Mhm.
may have to enlist the help of others. And
Yeah.
so the biggest way to market right now, and it's free, is social media.
Yeah.
My recommendation to people who want to be authors is at a minimum that you have an Instagram and a TikTok to market your book. For
Yeah.
me, I had to hire some ghostwriters to create social media content at least 3 times a week because there's a minimum amount of post that you
Yeah.
need to post to generate engagement and to keep that engagement. One thing I learned, if you decide to do a social media hiatus, it will reset your following and your
Mhm.
engagement and how many viewers you have. Another thing I learned was that there are different times, there are peak times that you should be posting,
Yeah.
and you have to think about the different time zones.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that go into marketing with social media, the number of posts, how to generate engagement, announcing when you're going to go live, going live,
Yeah.
utilizing those things. And again, it's free. And so those are resources that you can use that don't require additional funds.
Yeah. Right. Right. And one other concept of marketing the book that I always include when I talk to people is like book cover design. How important did book cover design play um, with you determining on is this good enough or will this reach an audience?
So for me, the book design, um, and as I share with the book right here, there is a woman, you can't really tell, but she's naked and she's bald.
Mhm.
To me, that symbolizes something that communicates vulnerability.
Mm,
On the outside of the trap. And then there's the traps, and
yeah.
it's shaped in a heart. Well, that heart represents God's grace because
Mm,
God is even present in the traps. And so, and then there's a chain, and in the trap, there's a cross. So I was very intentional about what I wanted to communicate in this design. And I do believe God gave me this design. And so you have to have a vision. Now, this type of detail may not be applicable to every book,
right. Right.
but for me, I am intentional about the message that I want to convey. And if I'm at Starbucks and I'm reading this book and someone comes to me and talk to me, I can walk them through grace just from the cover,
Yeah. Right. Right.
using the symbols that are uniquely embedded in the book cover. So it's not just a design; it
Yeah.
communicates something. Now, you can have a book cover or book design that has too much. Going back to marketing, you want to research colors. There are certain colors that elicit emotion. If
Yeah.
you, my recommendation is that go to Disney, look at all of their designs for their movies, look
Yeah.
at the color schemes they use. There's a theme, and you'll have to be able to identify that theme in the colors that they use. But it's designed to generate interest, it's designed to be appealing to the human eye.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research that goes into that. So when you're talking about marketing, your cover design of your book ties directly into your marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So as you're designing your book, you need to think about color, you need to think about font, you need to think about positioning
Yeah.
of the font, you need to think about spacing. There's a lot of things that go in. And then for me, I found someone to design the cover based on the words that I gave them.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so it's as you're looking for a graphic designer, you want to make sure they're able to capture your intent.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is your product. It is a representation of you.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that it accurately represents your heart's desire.
Yeah.
And for me, that is that we're vulnerable, but with God's grace, we can overcome. The traps are coming, but even in the trap, God is present. And
Yeah.
so all of those things are captured in both of my designs.
Yeah. So Leslie, if you can share with everyone, if I'm a new author, I have my book published, I've been utilizing social media, but the traction is slow. Can you speak to the importance of building a community around your project or how to build that community beyond just putting a post up with a caption?
So, one way you can build a community for your book is to start off with book readings. Generate book readings, go live, generate readings, invite people to join you, or start with a small group in your home. It really depends on the type of book you have. I recommend going to local bookstores and see if they will allow you to plan an event to read your book or read excerpts. That is one way to generate community. I really like the resource that Facebook allows you to start a group or a private group. You can start a private group that way and go live and
Mhm.
generate feedback. Um, Soliciting feedback for your book is a really critical process of writing your story, but it doesn't stop with writing the story. You have to continue to solicit feedback, and that's
That's
how you build community, and that's how you start the conversation. And so every opportunity that you have with your network and your marketing is an opportunity for you to share something about your book
yeah,
and start the conversation.
yeah,
And so it really starts with starting the conversation. How do you start the conversation and build community? Utilize social media, read your book out loud, start a small group where you read a section of your group and you solicit feedback. And word of mouth will allow you to build that community, especially if your genre is self help.
yeah. And I know you mentioned earlier that your book came out in the midst of one of the hardest years of most of our lives. And so that landscape looked quite different than today's landscape. Has it been a slow crawl to get book sales since 2020? Or are you still hitting the ground just as hard as before and you're seeing consistency in your sales?
So, writing a book and selling a book, most people do not get into this business to make money. I'll just say that
Yeah.
right now. It is definitely hard to make a profit. What I'm seeing, for me at least, word of mouth.
Mhm.
Biggest thing that has helped me are Google reviews. And so what you want to do, you want to make sure my book is available on Amazon. So when someone buys my book, I need them to not only read it, but to go back and leave a review on Amazon.
Mm. Yeah.
That helps. Having a book launch during COVID, it was a virtual book launch, was very difficult because it's harder to connect.
Right.
And
Right.
so I had to go back and backtrack, and I did an in person book launch 2 years later. And so the virtual world, people also want to know that they have variety. So they don't
Mm.
just want the written book, they want the audio book.
Oh, that is true. Yeah.
Have to take into consideration maybe your audience doesn't want to increase their green footprint,
Yeah.
and so their audio library is extensive. And so those are things that you have to take into consideration. Generating momentum for your book is a process. Much like healing, it does not happen overnight. Consistency with social media marketing, consistency with networking, finding opportunities for authors in your community,
Yeah.
uh, finding open mic nights, taking those opportunities to go and read excerpts of your book
Yeah.
will also generate the momentum you need to generate the sales. So, momentum requires discipline and consistency.
Yeah. And I know something that I've encountered a lot from people who are authors or aspiring to become an author. Is it or did you find that it was intimidating to get support from like your local bookstore to do an in-store reading or trying to work with somebody like Barnes and Nobles? Are you intimidated by reaching out or did you find any opposition being a local author?
I wouldn't say that I found opposition, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so, when it comes to even editing and finding someone to create a design, you have to research what options are available to you. I went to readsy.com, and
Mm,
they offer editors, they offer digital designs. Once I decided to be an author and I put that out there, I had different people contacting me about publishing.
yeah,
Even then, you have to be versed and you have to know what they can offer.
yeah,
And if being published, if not self-publishing and going through a publisher, will that compromise the integrity of your project?
right,
So
right.
there are a lot of things to consider. For me, I don't want the message compromised. So I'm okay with self-publishing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. There are self-publishing, people have a certain viewpoint on the type of respect they give it, right? But I still believe that it's It's a tall order for a person to decide that I don't want to compromise the story. I don't want to compromise the feeling of the book that I want my readers to have or the connection I want the readers to make. And so I'm going to self-publish. And with that, I am accepting a responsibility that everything after that, which includes marketing, which includes trying to build partnerships with local bookstores, everything that comes after that is your sole responsibility. And so when you look at it on the other hand and you want to get your book in bookstores and everybody loves that feeling of knowing they can walk on a shelf and get their book. But a lot of people don't realize that most of these retailers are going to ask for a 50% to 55% minimum off the value of your book. So like you said before, you can't come into this business expecting to be a millionaire right off the bat. But when you have to take 50 to 55% off of your book just to get it in stores, now that profit margin has shrunk a lot. Did that play into your decision as well, outside of not compromising the integrity, but being able to solely control the profit that you can bring in?
So for me, profit um, is not a factor. And so what I'm going to tell authors is you have to consider the desires of your heart.
Mhm.
What do you want your legacy to be with your book? The legacy that I want for my book is that my children will read it, my grandchildren will read it, my
Yeah,
great grandchildren will read it. Not only will they read it, they will know that I'm not perfect. They will know that I'm an overcomer because of God's grace. That is
yeah,
not something that you can quantify. That
true.
is a qualitative value. That is a qualitative benefit. That is my legacy. And so my legacy doesn't have a dollar amount. And so you have to know if your goal is to make a profit and be rich, or
Yeah,
is your goal to leave a legacy that your children can, in my case, overcome, and you can walk them through the overcoming process.
yeah.
Because a lot of times as parents, and this is the best example I have, their parents die and
Hmm.
their children don't know them, and their children only remember the good things, but the children are not aware of their struggles.
Right.
And I want my children to know that I've struggled and I've failed, but I've conquered and I'm victorious and I'm an overcomer. And guess what? Because you are my child, you are an overcomer, you are a warrior, and you will reap the benefits of showing up every day and not giving up.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that is my legacy. And that is what I hold dear to my heart.
yeah,
Barnes and Noble would be me chasing status.
yeah,
If Barnes and Noble or an interview with Oprah is the byproduct of my pure intentions, which is to leave a legacy for my children,
yeah,
I welcome that. I won't shut that off, but that is not the purpose. The purpose is to impact first the people in our home and then impact the people within our immediate circle, and for them to take the book and the message and to impact the people in their home and then the people in their immediate circle.
right.
And so that's my marketing strategy. That's
Yeah,
my networking strategy. That is my strategy for developing a following. That is my strategy for moving forward. And it is my motivation.
yeah. So, any future plans outside of the two books that's coming? What can the listeners expect from you? And then also drop those dates and when we can expect at least book two. If you have the dates, drop the date of when we can at least expect book two.
Well, again, I'm Leslie D. Ricks. I am the founder of Overcoming in Grace LLC and the author. Volume 2, Walking in Grace, will be released this year. I will share intimate stories about my traps and how I overcome and how I simply show up and take advantage of the gift of life that God has given me.
Yeah.
Um, all of my information can be found at lesliericks.com. I am on social, Instagram and Facebook,
Mhm.
Leslie D. Ricks, and that is how you can contact me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that book is on Amazon. Again, the title is The Trap Overcoming by Grace, right? So yeah,
Okay.
definitely go bombard Amazon, get the book, get the Kindle version. If you want to reduce the the output of print, get the audio book. It's always great to have both because like I find that sometimes I'm traveling, I travel long distances, and so audiobooks really help me feel like I get to my destination faster, even though the time change hasn't. So I'm a fan of audiobooks as well. One last thing. If there was a word or a statement to sum up everything we talked about today that you can leave the listeners with, what would that be?
If God allows you to wake up, you have a responsibility to show up
Mhm.
and put one foot in front of the other, trusting and knowing that God is with you every step of the way.
Yeah,
You are a warrior, you are an overcomer, you are victorious, and you will reap the harvest if you do not give up.
perfect. Beautifully said. Again, Leslie, thank you so much for sharing space with us today. I felt like I learned a lot about your story personally and with this book and what's to come. I'm walking away feeling a little bit more empowered just in what I can do in my personal life, in the community and circle I have around me. I feel like this is a very fulfilling conversation. And so I'm looking forward to what comes next. Look, I have been telling Leslie that she should come out with a podcast. I believe that she has so much insightful information that can just help us through every day. Who knows if you're at work and you just need some empowering or encouraging words. So if you believe Leslie should start a podcast, let's encourage her, drop those comments, bombard her email, and let her know that that's something you would tune into. So again, Leslie, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.